Hi, I wanted to show you what we can find in the night sky to celebrate Valentine's Day. Right now, using Stellarium, we are looking in the northern part of the sky. One way we can see we're looking in the northern part of the sky, I'm going to click on one of these stars here, and I'm going to show you the constellation you can find in that part of the sky. You might recognize a few of these stars. This is the constellation known as Ursa Major right here. But the 7 stars right there, you know them as the Big Dipper. And if we follow these 2 stars here, we can actually point to Polaris. And that's a part of Ursa Minor, but you probably recognize that as the Little Dipper as well. Now, I'm going to move, you can ignore Draco there for just a moment. I'm going to move down just a little bit, and I wanted to follow past the Little Dipper over to what you can find as an M shape of stars. This M shape here is another group of stars that you can find in the sky all throughout the night here around Champaign. This is the constellation known as Cassiopeia that you can see right there. Okay, and now from Cassiopeia, I'm going to be looking for a nearby constellation called Perseus. I always like to remember Perseus as going from Cassiopeia over to the Pleiades. You can find the 7 sisters right over here. It's in the constellation of Taurus, yeah. But right here is where the constellation of Perseus is. And between Cassiopeia and Perseus is a beautiful object that you can easily see just with binoculars. It's also actually bright enough to see without a telescope. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer so you can find this. What we are doing is we are looking for something called the double cluster. I will show it to you by just finding it this way. I'm doing this because I can't see it very easily in the software at this moment. There it is right there. It's a lot easier to see in the night sky, I promise you. And here is a nice photograph that you can find of that part of the sky. There's a cluster of stars here, and there's another cluster of stars right up there. So those 2 clusters are what make up the double cluster in Perseus. All right. Now, just to the right of the double cluster, oh, hey, look at that. Take a look at this nebula right here. What we're calling a nebula is an area of gas and dust in the night sky that happens to give off some light. In the case of some nebulae, they glow blue because they're actually scattering starlight. We call those reflection nebulae. But this red light you see right here is because the hydrogen gas that makes up this nebula is glowing so hot that it gets so hot from the starlight that it's actually giving off its own light. Okay, so they refer to these as emission nebulae. And in the case of this emission nebula, it kind of looks a little bit like a heart. All right, I don't think I can get this to click on it correctly, so we're going to cheat a little bit here. Yeah, I'm going to have to go ahead and use this one more time. There we go. Yeah, we're looking at the Heart Nebula right here. Now, you'll notice a number of other names up here as well, and that's because these names are not necessarily official. A lot of people see lots of different things when they look up in the sky, so these nebulae can go by different names. Apparently somebody here saw this as a running dog. Okay. But definitely, I'm betting you folks look at this and you might see one of our classic Valentine's hearts. So this is the Heart Nebula, or also known as the Valentine Nebula. And as I said, this red light is coming from hydrogen gas that's being heated up enough to actually glow red light. And where that heating up is coming from, right at the very center of this nebula, you see some hot, young, bright stars. Nebulae are actually regions where you have basically newborn stars that are first shining their light out into space. So a lot of people refer to nebulae as stellar nurseries. Okay, and this is just a great classic example. Now, there's one other nebula I wanted to show you folks. So let's see if I can get that to you now. To do this, we need to go and look over in the southern portion of the sky. We're going to go and find the constellation of Orion. I need to zoom out just a little bit more. Oh, there it is. I can find Orion now. And with Orion, you see the bright 7 stars that make up Orion, along with several other stars. And there's Orion's belt right there. Now, in addition to finding the constellation of Orion here, and here I'm going to do this, in addition to finding the constellation of Orion, you can find that Orion has 2 hunting dogs. Sirius, the dog star, is part of Orion's bigger hunting dog, Canis Major, and if you go up and to the left, you'll find Canis Minor with the bright star Procyon there. Now, in between Canis Minor and this bright star Betelgeuse that you see here, we will find our next object. But there's a more fun way to find it here. Notice that between our 2 hunting dogs, we are actually not seeing a whole lot of bright stars. You'd have a hard time seeing many stars like that in the sky if you were looking on your own. And so there's not really a good real classic constellation in that part of the sky. So this is a good way to help you imagine that there's actually kind of a mythical constellation there. Because when I click on that part of the sky, we find Monoceros, the unicorn. I love how in Stellarium it actually makes it look like the unicorn is what the little dog is riding upon. Okay? So yeah, the area where you can't see stars, that's the mythical unicorn constellation. And I know that in this artwork, we're going to be looking right around the snout for where we can find this next nebula. Oh yeah, it's right there behind the artwork. All right? This is a classic nebula because in astronomical photographs, it just looks utterly gorgeous. All right? Let me see if I can get this up here correctly. Oh, there we go. So we are looking at the Rosette Nebula right here. And when I zoom in on this close enough, oh yeah, look at that. It kind of looks like a rose. Yeah. So this is another emission nebula like you just saw with the Heart Nebula. But it just so happens that this one happens to look like a rose. Oh, just so amazingly beautiful. The reason why at the very center we see it looks a little bit darker than what we see around the edges is because these hot, young, bright stars that are newly formed in this stellar nursery, they are shining their light so brightly that they're actually pushing that gas out of that part of the sky. What eventually happens with all these clusters of stars that form from these nebulae is that they actually help disperse that gas as the stars continue to shine after they have formed. Okay? So if you were to look at this nebula thousands or millions of years later, you would no longer see that gas and dust surrounding them because that gas and dust would have been blown away by those stars. But at this moment, when we look at the Rosette Nebula, we still see this lovely reddish glow in the sky. Thank you very much.